Plato is often cited as the father of Western culture, society, and philosophy. And today we're going to delve into the life and influence of Plato, who might be one of the most pivotal and influential figures in Western philosophy, if not in the West in general. So this video is going to do a couple of things. We're going to explore the life and times of the man Plato, and we are going to have a look at one of his seminal texts, the Apology. So when we're looking at the life of Plato, we are going to look at things like his early life, his education, his association with Socrates, which is extremely important, and also the enduring legacy of his philosophical contributions. After we look at Plato the man, we're going to, as I said before, we're going to explore one of his most famous works, which is called the Apology. The Apology is about the trial of Socrates, but we will get to that. When we look at the Apology, we're also going to make some comparisons to other philosophical ideas as well, just to put things into some meaningful perspective. Plato was born around 428, maybe 427 BCE in Athens, and he was born into a wealthy family, an aristocratic family, in fact. His father, Ariston, I've probably pronounced that wrong. I will butcher every Greek name that I come across. I am just no good at pronouncing them, so I apologise. Anyway, Plato's father claimed descent from the last king of Athens, who went by the name of Cordus, while his mother was supposedly related to Solon, who was like an eminent Athenian lawmaker. And this noble lineage positioned Plato within the elite of Athens, the upper echelons of Athenian society, and that placement within that level of society provided him with an extremely privileged upbringing, and also for the time an extremely in-depth and complete and comprehensive education. He had 3 brothers and a sister. And after Plato's father died, which was when Plato and his siblings were quite small, his mother remarried. And Plato grew up during the Peloponnesian War. And during that time, Plato experienced significant political and social turmoil. It was a wild time for Athens and Greece in general. He was initially inclined towards a political career, as is quite common for Athenians, especially in that sort of elite level of society. But he was influenced by the corruption and turmoil that he witnessed, and that, combined with the unjust trial and indeed execution of his mentor Socrates, redirected Plato's focus towards philosophy. And all the world is all the better for it. Plato's education was, as was quite common for Athenian aristocrats, it was extensive, and he was educated in subjects like music, poetry, mathematics, gymnastics, and these subjects were really quite typical for Athenian aristocrats. His philosophical journey began under the tutelage of Cratylus, a disciple of Heraclitus, who introduced him to the idea of constant change in the universe. However, It was Plato's association with Socrates that profoundly shaped his philosophical direction and resulted in the philosophy that we know and understand today. Socrates' method of dialectical questioning, known as the Socratic method, involved rigorous questioning to expose contradictions and also, and perhaps more importantly, to stimulate critical thinking. This method focused on ethics and the pursuit of truth, and this method, the Socratic method, had a really quite deep and profound and lasting impact on Plato. It influenced every aspect of his life. The trial and the execution of Socrates in 399 BCE on charges of corrupting the youth and impiety were pivotal events that solidified Plato's disillusionment with politics, and, as I said before, it redirected his focus towards philosophy. Plato's relationship with Socrates was transformative. Socrates' emphasis on ethical living and his dialectical method became central to Plato's philosophical style. Plato's dialogues frequently featured Socrates as the protagonist, using his questioning techniques to explore various philosophical issues. The execution of Socrates was a defining moment in Plato's life, and it was such an important moment because it ripped open the Athenian justice system, and it really exposed the flaws and the injustices within that legal and political system. And that, in turn, prompted Plato to explore ideas around justice, the ideal state, and the role of philosophers in society. In 387 BCE, Plato founded the Academy in Athens, which is often considered to be the earliest sort of centre of higher education in Western history. And it is certainly the most influential educational institution in Western history. The Academy was named after the legendary hero Academus. The Academy provided a structured environment for philosophical and scientific inquiry, and as a result it attracted scholars from all across the Greek world, including, and perhaps most famously, Aristotle. And Aristotle studied at the Academy for about 20 years before founding his own school, the Lyceum. The Academy's curriculum was comprehensive, and it covered subjects from philosophy and mathematics to astronomy and political theory. And that significantly shaped Western intellectual history, and it influenced politics, it influenced the social structure of society, it influenced the lawmaking and justice arms of society all throughout the West. Following the death of Socrates, Plato travelled extensively, and he did so seeking knowledge and experiences that would shape his philosophical ideas. He spent some time in southern Italy and Sicily, where he encountered the Pythagorean school of thought. The Pythagoreans' emphasis on mathematics and their belief in the harmony of the cosmos related quite deeply with Plato, and it influenced his later work, especially his ideas about the mathematical structure of reality. He possibly visited Egypt, although that is a matter of debate, because there's a great deal of actual evidence. But the idea is that if he did visit Egypt, and it is, it's a potential, that would have broadened his intellectual horizons. and exposed him to different philosophical and religious ideas. And this is something we actually see throughout the dialogues, this influence that isn't Greek in origin. And so the general consensus is that that was from Egypt. So Plato's involvement in Syracuse was driven by his desire to see his philosophical ideas realized in governance. He really wanted to see his philosophy played out in a practical way, because a lot of philosophy is purely theoretical, people talking about ideas and so on. And Plato realized that actually there's an element of practicality to philosophy that is a necessary part of philosophy, and without it, all of the theoretical stuff doesn't really mean anything. So Plato first visited Syracuse around 387 BCE, and he did so at the invitation of Dion, the brother-in-law, of Dionysius the Elder. And the aim was to educate Dionysius the Younger in philosophy and guide him towards becoming a philosopher king. Despite his efforts, the political realities and indeed the resistance from the ruling elite, to say the least, it threw a spanner in the works. It derailed the whole plan. Plato's subsequent visits to Syracuse were marked by similar challenges, and that led Plato to a more pragmatic approach in his later works, such as the Laws. Plato led a life dedicated to philosophical inquiry and education. He never married. He had no known children. He devoted all of his time to teaching and writing. His personal habits reflected his philosophical principles. He lived simply, and he valued intellectual pursuits over material wealth. Contemporary accounts describe Plato as a man of strong moral character, deeply respected by his students and peers. His dialogues often reflect his own philosophical journey and quest for understanding and, ultimately, wisdom. Plato died in around 348, maybe 347 BCE, and we don't actually know where he died, but it is likely he died in Athens. And when he did die, he was a man of around 80, which, 80 is an old man by modern standards, but for the time, it was an extremely long life. It wasn't like what so wildly uncommon that he was some sort of how should I say, like some sort of oddity, but it was rare enough that that it was significant that he managed to reach that age. He was reportedly, although never actually confirmed, obviously, but he was reportedly buried on the grounds of the academy. And that, in essence, was to symbolize his lifelong commitment to education and philosophy. And if Plato was indeed buried at the academy, I would imagine that Plato would be extremely happy with that arrangement. His extensive body of work, consisting of dialogues and letters, has had a lasting impact on philosophy, on political theory, and education. His exploration of concepts such as justice, beauty, equality, and the nature of reality laid the foundations for Western philosophical thought. Much of what we know about Plato comes from the writings of his student Aristotle and later historians like Diogenes. Aristotle, who spent 20 years at the academy provides invaluable insights into Plato's teachings and his methods. Archaeological evidence, such as the remains of the academy near Athens, offer tangible proof of Plato's influence and the lasting impact of his educational institution. Excavations have uncovered structures and artifacts that offer glimpses into the life and the operations of the academy, corroborating historical records and also, and perhaps more importantly, enhancing our understanding of Plato's contributions to education and philosophy. Plato's establishment of the academy was a milestone in the history of education. The academy not only provided a structured environment for philosophical inquiry, but also promoted the interdisciplinary studies. Well, that was a mouthful. Including mathematics, astronomy, and natural science. This holistic approach to education influenced the development of later educational institutions and established a viable model for the integration of various fields of knowledge. Plato's pedagogical methods emphasized dialogue and critical thinking, encouraging students to engage in rigorous intellectual debates and develop their understanding of complex philosophical ideas. Plato's work laid the foundation for various fields, including philosophy, obviously, political theory, and science. His dialogues explore essential concepts such as justice, beauty, equality, what have I missed? Justice, beauty, equality. Oh, and also he introduced the theory of forms, which posits the material world. So basically the theory of forms is this idea that the material world is essentially a shadow or a reflection of a higher, unchanging reality. And these ideas have profoundly influenced Western thought, shaping the intellectual landscape for centuries. The theory of forms suggests that there are perfect, immutable archetypes or forms, of which objects in the material world are imperfect copies. This is a concept that has been central to discussions in metaphysics, and also in the realms of theology and philosophical thought and so on. Plato's influence extended through his students, most notably Aristotle, who founded his own school, as I said before, the Lyceum. The academy continued to operate for centuries, and in its time it produced many influential philosophers and scholars. Plato's ideas and the methods were transmitted through these students, ensuring that his philosophical legacy endured well beyond his lifetime. His work continues to inspire and indeed challenge thinkers around the world, making him one of the most, if not the number one most enduring figure in the history of philosophy and perhaps the history of the West in general. Plato's life and work have left an enduring legacy on the West. His influences, his association with Socrates, the establishment of the academy, and his philosophical explorations have shaped the intellectual traditions that followed. Plato's commitment to understanding and improving the human condition through philosophy continues to resonate, affirming his place as one of the foundational figures in Western thought. To understand Plato requires more than just examining the events of his life. achieving a deep understanding of a man as wise and complex as Plato requires an examination of the ideas he shared with the world, ideas that have become the basis of Western thought, philosophy, and indeed society. As a step towards understanding, we will now do exactly that. We will explore the ideas he shared with the world. It would be impossible to do so comprehensively in a single video. Plato was as prolific a writer as he was a thinker and a philosopher. As such, we will only examine one of his dialogues, the Apology. And more than just examining one of the dialogues, we will only be examining a few of the ideas that are present within that dialogue, because Plato, beyond being an iconic philosopher, was an incredible writer. So he managed to pack a lot of meaning, both directly and indirectly, in those texts. And one video alone on just the Apology, covering all of those ideas, exploring all of those ideas, would be horrendously long, and nobody would watch it. I mean, as it stands, there might possibly be nobody who watches this video as it is. But yeah, so we are going to explore the Apology, but we aren't going to spend the rest of our life doing so. But this is a really great place to start. This is the start of your journey into understanding the nature of Platonic philosophy, and that in itself being an extension of Socratic philosophy. So before I delve into the Apology, I just want to point out that the person we're most talking about in the Apology really is Socrates, who was a mentor to Plato. Now, I have done another video about Socrates. If you'd like to know more about Socrates himself, then go and check that out. You can find it on the channel. So we're not going to do too much exploration or indeed explanation around Socrates himself. We're just going to be looking at the text, at the Apology. So Plato's Apology is a foundational text in Western philosophy, and in it, Plato captured the defense speech of Socrates during his trial in 399 BCE. Socrates was accused of corrupting the youth and impiety. Socrates uses this opportunity to articulate his philosophical mission, and also to confront his accusers. This dialogue not only records his defense, but also explores profound themes, which we're going to have a look at, such as the nature of wisdom, the role of the philosopher in society, and the essence of ethical living. There are many other ideas that we could explore through the medium of the Apology, but as I said before, that would be an enormously long video that nobody will watch. So I will in the future do more videos on the Apology and indeed the other works of Plato. So we're going to start with the nature of wisdom. Socrates' assertion, "I know that I know nothing," is a cornerstone of his philosophical stance. This paradoxical statement emphasizes his awareness of his own ignorance, which in itself distinguishes him from those who falsely claim to possess knowledge. Socrates' wisdom lies in recognizing his limitations, which he considers to be a crucial step towards true understanding. This idea of I know that I know nothing. So when Socrates was a young man, a friend of his went to the oracle at Delphi and asked the oracle, "Is there any man wiser than Socrates?" And the oracle said, and I am paraphrasing horribly here, but essentially the The oracle said, "There is no man wiser than Socrates." So this chap goes back to Socrates. This isn't in the apology, but this chap goes back to Socrates, and he says to Socrates that, look, the oracle thinks that you are the wisest man in all of Athens. And Socrates goes, he hears that, and his response is along the lines of, well, I don't know anything. How can that be true? So then Socrates spent the rest of his life going around talking to people, asking them questions, examining and cross-examining, and found that he was indeed wise, not because he knows stuff, but because he knows that he doesn't. And that is what separates him. So he went to different people, he went to politicians, he went to artists and craftsmen and so on, and found that while they had wisdom in their particular field, they did not have wisdom in a general sense, but they thought they did. And that thing that separates Socrates from them is that recognition of the fact that he doesn't have general wisdom. This concept finds echoes, you could say, in René Descartes' philosophy, in Meditations on First Philosophy. Descartes employs methodic doubt to strip away all uncertain knowledge, arriving at the foundational truth, cogito ergo sum, or, in English, I think, therefore I am. While Descartes ultimately seeks certainty, his initial skepticism mirrors the humility of Socrates regarding the limits of human knowledge. And both philosophers, or maybe all three really, Socrates, Plato, and René Descartes, underscore the importance of questioning and doubting as the pathway to deeper understanding and insight. This idea also resonates with Eastern philosophies. In Taoism, Laozi, I have no idea how to pronounce that, Laozi advocates for embracing the unknown and the mysterious, suggesting that true wisdom comes from recognizing the limits of rational understanding. Laozi's concept of wu wei, or in English, effortless action, aligns with Socrates' emphasis on the importance of acknowledging one's own ignorance and the natural flow of knowledge. The Socratic idea of acknowledging your own ignorance is reflected in modern society through the scientific method. A large part of the scientific method is geared towards identifying areas in which we are ignorant. Moreover, it pushes us to question the validity of the assumptions associated with the hypothesis that is being explored. So every sort of theory or hypothesis is loaded with assumptions, sort of things that are assumed to be true, or that must be assumed to be true for this hypothesis to work. So this Socratic method, this idea of understanding the limits of your knowledge and your sort of reasoning and so on. This in the scientific method presents itself as a means by which we get closer to the truth, because, as I said, every hypothesis or theory is loaded with assumptions. So each of those assumptions needs to be questioned. You need to look upon those assumptions with a skeptical eye, and that is something that we have gained from the Socratic method. So this how should I say, testing of assumptions leads to the uncovering of areas in which we did not previously know that we were ignorant. And it's only then that the hypothesis itself can be truly tested and explored. So we're going to have a look at, so that was the nature of wisdom, and there is a hell of a lot more we could say on that, but I don't want to keep you here forever. I will delve into the nature of wisdom in a video by itself at some point, so look out for that. It will probably be extremely long, so be prepared for that. But yeah, I will do that in the future. But for now, we're going to move on to the role of the philosopher. In Plato's Apology, Socrates positions himself as a gadfly to the Athenian state, constantly provoking and challenging the status quo. He states, "I am that gadfly which God has given the state, and all day long and in all places am always fastening upon you, arousing and persuading and reproaching you." So this metaphor, this extremely visual metaphor, highlights the philosopher's duty to incite critical thinking and moral reflection, even at the risk of personal harm, a risk that was all too real for Socrates as he was on trial for corrupting the youth and impiety. Just as a quick note, for those of you that don't know, a gadfly is essentially like a horsefly. So you could replace that with any other, mosquito, whatever you want. But nonetheless, the point still stands. But I just thought I'd let you know what a gadfly is, because I am not a biologist of any kind. So when I first read the Apology many years ago, I was quite young at the time, so I had no idea what a gadfly was. So I had to go and ask my dad. But yeah, so I just thought I'd jump in with that. So I apologise if everybody else in the world knows what a gadfly is and I'm just being patronising and condescending, but when I first came across the works of Plato as a child, I had no idea. So, but anyway, Immanuel Kant, in his essay "What is Enlightenment?", similarly champions the role of reason and critical inquiry in human progress. He urges individuals to dare to know. Essentially, have courage to use your own reason. Kant's call for intellectual independence and his critique of dogmatic thinking parallels Socrates' mission to awaken the Athenian populace from their, should we say, intellectual slumber. Comparatively, Nietzsche's concept of the philosopher of the future in it was Beyond Good and Evil. That was what it was in. Nietzsche's concept of the philosopher of the future in Beyond Good and Evil suggests that philosophers should not merely interpret the world, but also challenge and transform it. Nietzsche's ideal philosopher, much like Socrates, is a disruptor of norms and conventions, advocating for re-evaluation of values and beliefs. This transformative role underscores the enduring significance of Platonic philosophy and Socratic philosophy, which are almost one and the same thing, in inspiring the what could be described as an intellectual revolution and moral questioning. We see in the modern world a lot of complaints about philosophy, and these complaints aren't really anything new. These complaints nearly always have to do with the idea that the philosopher's tendency to sit on the outside to observe but not participate separates them from the populace in such a way that they risk becoming disconnected and irrelevant. Counter to this are philosophers who take a much more active approach in society, using their analytical minds to examine, critique, and, most importantly, work to improve society. These are the kinds of philosophers that Plato, Socrates, Plutarch, Kant, Nietzsche, and so on are advocating for. Modern society and culture may not label these people as philosophers. Instead, we would likely call them public intellectuals. Nonetheless, these are the true philosophers of the modern age. So that is the role of the philosopher. And the role of the philosopher from the perspective of Plato and Socrates is it's quite complex, and there's more to it than I've just laid out. But that is the core of it, that the philosopher should basically play an active role in society. So now we're going to have a brief look at the ideas around ethical living and what Socrates defined as the unexamined life. Socrates' famous declaration that the unexamined life is not worth living encapsulates his ethical philosophy. For Socrates, living ethically requires continuous self-examination and the pursuit of virtue. This conviction is evident throughout his defense, where he prioritizes moral integrity over self-preservation, demonstrating his commitment to his ethical principles. Aristotle, in his Nicomachean Ethics, expands on this notion, presenting a systematic approach to achieving what he called eudaimonia, which translates kind of vaguely to like flourishing or well-being. But yeah, so this approach, this systematic approach that Aristotle put forward to achieve that state of eudaimonia is done so through virtuous living. Aristotle's framework, his ethical framework, emphasizes the development of character and what he called the golden mean, advocating for a balanced approach to life. Both philosophers agree that ethical living is central to human existence, though Aristotle provides a much more structured methodology for achieving it. This idea also finds resonance in Eastern philosophies such as Confucianism. Confucius emphasizes the cultivation of virtue through self-reflection and moral development. His concept of Ren, which translates roughly to benevolence, and the importance of moral rectitude aligns with the Socratic emphasis on the examined life and the pursuit of ethical living. Now, Confucianism is an often misunderstood philosophy. So if you haven't spent any time exploring Confucianism, I have a video on the channel all about Confucianism. It is a really brief, quick and dirty intro into the core principles of Confucianism. So go and check that out. I think you'll find it really interesting. At least I hope you do. But yeah, so back to what we was talking about. So this idea of ethical living and the unexamined life is a central feature of modern therapeutic approaches. It is through the means of examining one's life that, with the help of an appropriately trained and licensed therapist, an individual is able to identify the steps they need to take in order to have a better, healthier, and ultimately more fulfilling life. So the ideas of ethical living and an unexamined life are mirrored in quite a lot of different philosophers' writings and thinking and teachings and so on. And it is definitely worth something worth exploring further in more detail, which I will do in another video. But for now, we're going to move on to some some comparative interpretations and how that relates to us here in the modern world. Existentialism and authenticity is the first stop on that little journey. So the existentialist movement, which gained prominence in the 20th century, shares many thematic concerns with Socratic philosophy, particularly the emphasis on authenticity and individual responsibility. Jean-Paul Sartre, one of the leading figures of the existentialist movement, introduces the concept of bad faith in his work Being and Nothingness. According to Sartre, bad faith involves self-deception where individuals conform to societal norms and indeed expectations without any real meaningful or genuine reflection on their own values and beliefs. This state of inauthenticity mirrors Socrates' critique of unreflective living. As we have just covered, in the Apology, Socrates is quoted as saying, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And both Socrates and Sartre challenge individuals to live authentically by constantly questioning their own existence and the world around them. Albert Camus, another prominent existentialist, explores the theme of the absurd, which is a beautiful notion, but I have done a video on existentialism, so I do go into some detail about the absurd there, so go check that out on the channel. But yeah, so Camus explores the theme of the absurd in works like The Myth of Sisyphus. The Myth of Sisyphus. That was a mouthful. So the absurd arises from the conflict between humans' desire for meaning and the silent, indifferent universe. Socrates' relentless questioning and pursuit of truth, despite the lack of definitive answers, can be seen as an early exploration of the absurd condition. Socrates' acceptance of his fate and his commitment to his philosophical principles, even in the face of death, parallel Camus' notion of embracing the absurd and finding meaning through the struggle itself. And that is a concept that is mirrored in other philosophies as well, but also in some part, at least, in theology. So let's look at the ideas of, well, they're from the sort of the realms of political philosophy, and they are ideas that are extremely relevant to us in this day and age, and those ideas are free speech and dissent. The Apology has significant implications for political philosophy, particularly regarding the importance of free speech and dissent. Socrates' trial and defense highlight the tensions between individual expression and societal norms. His willingness to question the established order and provoke critical thinking exemplifies the value of dissent in a democratic society. Socrates argues that his role as a gadfly is divinely sanctioned and essential for the health of the state. And this is a quote that we've already looked at, but it's relevant right now, so we can do it again. I am the gadfly which God has given the state, and all day long and in all places am always fastening upon you, arousing and persuading and reproaching you. John Stuart Mill, in On Liberty, provides a robust defence of free speech, arguing that silencing any opinion is detrimental to society. Mill states the peculiar evil of silencing the expression of an opinion is that it is robbing the human race. Mill's argument for the importance of a free marketplace of ideas echoes Socrates' advocacy for critical dialogue and intellectual diversity. Both philosophers contend that the free exchange of ideas is crucial for the development of knowledge and also the betterment of society. The concept of frank speech, explored by Michel Foucault, also resonates with Socratic philosophy. Foucault, in his lectures on the courage of truth, examines how Socratic frank speech involves risking one's own safety to speak the truth for the greater good. This notion aligns with Socrates' fearless commitment to his philosophical mission, even at the cost of his life. The courage to speak truth to power, a central theme in both the work of Plato and Socrates and of Foucault, underscores the ethical and political dimensions of free speech. Now, the debate on free speech is raging in the world at the moment, especially here in the West, and the idea that speech and by proxy thought should be censored or should be restricted is alluring to some and frightening to others. So I don't think this debate over free speech, the limits and so on and so forth, and the practicalities especially, is going to end anytime soon. And in fact, it might never end. But the beginnings of this debate, certainly in sort of known and recorded history, is really found in the works of Plato. So now we're going to look at educational philosophy, specifically the Socratic method. The Apology also profoundly influences educational philosophy through the Socratic method. This pedagogical approach, characterized by questioning and dialogue, fosters critical thinking and intellectual autonomy. In the Apology, Socrates describes his method of engaging with fellow citizens through questions that lead them to examine their beliefs and knowledge claims. This method is not merely about eliciting answers. In fact, it is hardly at all about eliciting answers. It is much more about guiding individuals towards deeper understanding and self-awareness. In essence, it is the method by which you extract a person's perceived truth from within. In contrast to didactic teaching methods, which emphasize the transmission of information from teacher to student, the Socratic method encourages active learning. So the didactic teaching method, if you think about the way we teach children in in primary school, or if you're in America, elementary school, there's a lot of memorization. The teacher gives the student information and the student has to memorize that information. That's the didactic teaching model. The Socratic method, however, is a little more free form in the sense that it's mirrored more in sort of higher education. So if you look at a higher education setting, there's a fair amount of the teacher, the lecturer, the professor, whatever title you want to give them, asking the students questions. Then when they answer those questions, they will be questioned upon those answers, and so on. And that results in the student being able to pull out information they have already and put it together creatively and usefully. So, in the Socratic method, students are essentially participating in their own learning process. They are engaging critically with ideas, and most importantly of all, they are developing their reasoning skills. This approach aligns with the educational philosophy of John Dewey, who advocates for experiential learning and the development of critical thinking abilities. Dewey's emphasis on education as a process of living rather than preparation, there we go, rather than preparation for future living. Let me try that again, because I started and stumbled so many times then it probably didn't make any sense. So Dewey's emphasis on education as a process of living rather than preparation for future living echoes the Socratic ideal of continuous self-examination and intellectual growth. In Freire's work, what was it called? The I can't speak today. The pedagogy. Oh my God, I can't speak today. The pedagogy of the oppressed. That has completely thrown me. Oh my God. Oh yeah, the pedagogy of the oppressed critiques traditional banking models of education, where students passively receive knowledge. The dialogical approach to education, which involves collaborative and problem-posing method, reflects the Socratic practice of engaging learners in meaningful dialogue. So this view of education is essentially that education is a liberatory process or practice, that empowers individuals to question and transform their reality. So that was a brief insight into the sort of educational philosophy around the Socratic method. I apologise for all the stuttering and stumbling through there. If you're wondering at all, I have my notes on the screen right here, and for a moment it completely vanished, so it really threw me off. But yeah, so now that we've looked at the sort of educational philosophy, let's have a look at the modern implications and applications of the philosophical themes within the Apology. So the philosophical themes in the Apology remain relevant today in contemporary society and continue to influence various domains such as ethics, politics, and education. The emphasis on self-examination and authenticity challenges individuals to live thoughtfully and ethically. In a world increasingly driven by technological advancements and social media, The Socratic call for introspection and critical questioning is more pertinent now than it ever has been. The pressure to conform to societal norms and the superficial validation offered by social media can lead to a life of, an unreflective life, basically. Embracing Socratic wisdom involves recognizing the limits of our knowledge and striving for genuine understanding and personal integrity. In the realm of political philosophy, the Apology serves as a reminder of the importance of dissent and the protection of free speech. In contemporary democracies, the role of the gadfly is vital in holding power to account and fostering a vibrant public discourse. The rise of popularism and authoritarianism in various parts of the world underscores the need for critical voices and the safeguarding of individual liberties. Socratic philosophy provides a powerful framework for defending the principles of open dialogue and intellectual freedom. In education, the Socratic method continues to inspire pedagogical practices that prioritize critical thinking and active learning. Educators can draw on Socratic principles to create learning environments that encourage inquiry, dialogue, and reflection. This approach not only enhances students' intellectual capabilities, but also prepares them to navigate the complexities of modern life with thoughtfulness and integrity. The enduring legacy of Socratic philosophy is, it is visibly evident in its continued relevance across a variety of fields of thought. The Socratic method has influenced modern educational practices, promoting active learning and critical inquiry. This approach encourages students to question assumptions and engage deeply with the material, fostering intellectual independence and analytical skills. Additionally, the themes explored in the Apology resonate in contemporary ethical debates. Socrates' emphasis on the moral integrity and self-examination challenges individuals to consider the ethical implications of their actions and decisions. This ethical framework is particularly relevant in discussions on professional ethics, where the principles of honesty, accountability, and self-reflection are paramount. In the realm of political philosophy, Socratic ideas inform contemporary debates on the role of dissent and the importance of free speech. Socrates' defense of his right to question authority and challenge the prevailing norms underscores the value of dissent in democratic societies. This principle is crucial in protecting individual freedoms and fostering a culture of open dialogue and critical examination. So we've essentially reached the end of our sort of introductory exploration of Plato and the philosophy of Plato. So, to conclude, I guess, Plato's Apology remains a cornerstone of philosophical thought, offering profound insights into wisdom, the role of the philosopher, and ethical living. Socrates' defense is not merely a historical account, but a timeless appeal for intellectual humility, critical examination, and moral integrity. By comparing Socratic ideas with those of Descartes, Kant, Aristotle, Nietzsche, and other more modern philosophers, we can appreciate this the enduring relevance of these themes in addressing contemporary philosophical and ethical challenges. The Apology continues to inspire critical thinking, ethical reflection, and the pursuit of wisdom, making it a vital text for understanding the human condition and a quest for a meaningful life. So, if you've got to the end, we are, I think, around the hour mark, so I'm going to leave it there. But if you did get to the end, thank you. I appreciate it. You are wonderful. Also, do all the YouTubey things that all the YouTubers ask you to do. What are those things? Like, subscribe, jump in the comments, tell me I'm an idiot. Maybe give it a share on social media and such. Whatever you like. Or do none of those things. It really doesn't matter. But thank you for watching. I hope you found it informative, useful, interesting, and most of all, I sincerely hope that you are able to put up with the sound of me waffling for an hour long. So thank you very much.